everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if you have your natal Jupiter in the 8th house, which is the house of transformation, as in death is a big one for the 8th house, but any kind of transformation, crisis, and trauma is connected to that, and shared resources. So one of the big things, if you combine death and other people's money, you get inheritance, and that can be an example of the money that you can benefit if you have Jupiter here, because Jupiter has its own connection to wealth. It is a planet of benevolence and is considered the planet of abundance, luck, and growth. So things can expand when Jupiter is in a particular house, and with the 8th house, that can mean your money or your wealth based on what you're getting from somebody else or from other people, if it's more than one person. So because this is the house that is associated with a crisis situation, so you could even say like a life and death situation, Jupiter can be your protector, can be your guardian angel. And so because this is a house of trauma, this can be an area, the 8th house, that is connected to all kinds of abuse, all kinds of power. This house of Scorpio is connected to power issues, okay? And when somebody is trying to get power, sometimes they use strong arm techniques to do that, intimidation. And so this is the area that is all about what lies beneath the surface and how, and the shadow. And we can even say like the collective shadow, as well as the individual's shadow. Before I continue, I just want to give a shout out to advancedastrology.com, which helped me to compile this list. I always paraphrase, so I want to distance myself from them because I may have paraphrased in a way that they did not intend or endorse. So anyway, this area is not only is this a house of death, but regeneration. So what's another word for regeneration? Regrowth? But that's not the word. It's like the phoenix rising from the ashes. So we could call it transformation, or being reborn, rebirth, if you will. And they mentioned in the online article, the cat that has 9 lives. So I put like cheating death multiple times. Now, that's not going to be true for every person who has this placement, but there might be some people with some dramatic stories of like, oh yeah, I was in this car accident and I walked away without any injuries. And, it's funny because I actually have seen a car just flip over, like just in a residential neighborhood. I was just walking down the street and a car flipped over, and the person was able to escape from it. And the first thing she said was, "Where's my phone?" and her car was like upside down. And they were just able to do it. And I don't know if the car burst into flames, but I mean, come on now. This was years ago, but this was when cell phones were still like, really probably a lot more expensive than they are now. But I just thought that was like insane. just seeing that, just seeing in a residential neighborhood, a car just flip over. But it's funny too, because I know someone who has the moon in Scorpio and has had different dramatic experiences. So yeah, I mean, especially if you have like Mars in Aries or something, where maybe Mars in conjunction with Aquarius, not Aquarius, with Uranus, where you're a daredevil, where you put yourself in dangerous circumstances, then that might be more the case where you experience this. Or if you are like in the military or something like that, then that would make sense. Mars is actually one of the rulers of the 8th house because it rules Scorpio. So Mars and Pluto rule the 8th house. Now, one thing about the 8th house that I didn't mention is sex. And I remember getting into a bit of an argument about sex and the houses, because I was always aware that sex was associated with the 8th house, but what I didn't know was that the 5th house was also about sex, because the 5th house is the house of pleasure. But the 5th house differs from the 8th house in that, the 5th house is about love, but it's not about commitment. So one of the things about pleasure that we know is that when people are looking for a good time, they're not necessarily looking for commitment. The 8th house is about bonding at the deepest level. So with the 5th house, it's about having a good time, and therefore it's associated with casual sex. Friends with benefits, dating, and maybe casually dating and sleeping around, that kind of thing. 8th house is like the person regards sex as, in a very serious way, as something that is meant to really merge them with that person. There's a merging quality with the 8th house, and that's why it's associated with intimacy. When we say the word, or we think about the word intimacy, we're really thinking about sex, but this is a water house since it's Scorpio's house. So ultimately, this is about the emotional nature and the person's attitude towards their emotions, especially, like I said, this is a shadow, the house of the shadow. And so Scorpio is notorious for being intense. That's the cliched term for Scorpio, because there's not that many synonyms that I can think of instead of that. But the truth is that because Scorpio or 8th house people take sex seriously, they're less likely to be promiscuous. And they will regard sex as something sacred. And this is why this house can be the house of sex magic. But they did say that the person might have a massive sex appetite for sex. You know what I mean? So I don't know about that. I don't think as a matter of fact, I think Jupiter has that kind of ethical connection to it. But there might be an indulgent nature that makes what they said more than likely to occur. So I'll just leave that there. You might be somebody who gravitates towards affluent partners. Now, I don't know, they didn't mention if this would be calculated or not, if this is just like par for the course, because one of the things is that you love luxuries. So that might stand to reason that you're hobnobbing in the circles where you're buying things in certain stores that are like kind of a cut above. And that's just the expansive nature of Jupiter in a money house at work. So that's what that's all about. If you happen to have a breakup with someone, you're going to bounce back very well because there's a very positive quality to Jupiter. The eighth house in Scorpio is kind of tricky energy because there can be this real strong vengeful streak within Scorpio. That's why Scorpio is so infamous, because it's a complicated sign. It's not very, a lot of Scorpio people are a mixed bag, they can have a very ethical framework and just be above board types of people, but they might have a side to them where they struggle with forgiving people who may have done things against them. And because of that, there is an association with Scorpio and seeking revenge, or at the very least wanting it. Whether or not they're actively pursuing it, they might want it and think that a situation can't really be healed unless they know that that person is paying for what they did. And I think too, because Scorpio is a fixed water sign, that there tends to be this hardened heart, sometimes, where the person ceases to have feeling for someone who they have had a negative experience with, and especially if that person breaks up with them. They might feel that that is unacceptable or what have you. But you having Jupiter here means that you're going to be protected from those intense emotions. You might find yourself working in the banking field, working as a financial advisor, the funeral business. They mentioned being an undertaker, but of course, that's not the only type of work that people do. I don't even know what the undertaker does. I thought that was kind of like the person who digs the ditch and buries the bodies. But maybe I'm wrong about that. I would say like the funeral director could be this. Anyone who is in that field. And I actually met a young woman who was studying to be an undertaker, or, I don't know what you call it, the mortuary sciences. And that was the first and only person I've ever met in my life who was, studying to do that. I was in a class with hers, but she was also taking this other type of course. And I don't know what became of that, but I would imagine she graduated. I just think it's an interesting field. So let's see, anything else that I did not cover? Well, it's important for you to not give in to greed, to be above board when it comes to money, because I don't know like what they are implying, if they're just saying just resist the temptation. But sometimes it could be that you have an above average tendency to come across unethical situations or less than ethical to profit from, and you may be tempted. And you'll sleep a lot better if you are always impeccable with your actions concerning, abundance in this shared resource sector. And greed, because Jupiter is a planet of expansion, it can simply mean that you're always looking for more, and maybe even through others, that you're always seeking more and more and more. And you don't want to be the kind of person who is like always grasping, looking for a payout, if you will. So that's what I have for you. And I hope that this resonated. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.